What if the definition of luxury in Texas no longer has a thing to do with downtown Austin or downtown Dallas? I'm helping a family right now that's trading a high-rise downtown condo in Austin for a little bit more space. It's a riverfront estate. It's got room for horses. It's got a grape vineyard on it, and it's got room for all 3 generations of their family. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the 5 estate types that are completely redefining what luxury is in Texas. It's just not located in a big city. I mean, let's think about it for a second. Most people define luxury as a massive amount of square footage, 15, 20,000 square feet. It has to be in a certain zip code, 78704 if you're in Austin or over in Tarrytown on the west side. But just outside of Austin, there's a different type of high-end luxury living that's taking shape. It's just that a lot of people haven't really thought about it before. And the people that are buying these properties, and there's some very well-known people that are buying these types of properties, they're done chasing labels. That's not important to them anymore. They're chasing land, they're chasing freedom, they're chasing the ability to do what they want on a property, they're chasing privacy. So with that in mind, let's talk about the estate types that you almost never see in the city, and the ones that are quietly becoming the most coveted property in Texas. The first of these is horse properties. And with horse properties, you've got to forget the city limits. In counties like Travis, Hayes, Blanco, Gillespie, you're going to find ag-exempt horse properties that are estates. They've got barns, they've got fenced pastures, they've got trail access. These things are absolutely beautiful. And when you're looking for horse properties, the ones that are already existing, they're functional. These are not people who just have property that's all grown up. They're absolutely beautiful. They're laid out the way that they should be laid out, with the barns and the paddocks, access to water and everything else. Some of the key things with these properties, first of all, are ag exemptions. If you can find properties that have ag exemptions, they're going to save you a ton of money on property taxes. Hayes County and a few of the other counties in Central Texas are also going to allow horse use under open space exemptions. And again, this ag exemption, this valuation is an absolute tax game changer. Okay, the second one we're going to talk about are vineyard estates. Now, I don't know if you've traveled out west of Austin very far, but the area between Johnson City and Fredericksburg is now known, I kind of laugh about it sometimes, but it's now known as the Napa Valley of Texas. It is the largest grape growing region outside of Napa Valley in the U.S. And you should see some of these properties that people are building out in the hill country. They look like something out of Italy dropped right into the middle of Texas. It's crazy. They're putting in acres of vineyards. They're building Mediterranean style homes. They've got wine tasting rooms. They've got tasting patios with massive hill country views. These things are incredible. And if you're considering buying a property and putting in grapes, or else finding a property that's already got grapes growing on it, here's a couple of things that you really need to look out for. First of all, south-facing slopes are going to be ideal, but you're also going to need irrigation access. Now, you can do drip irrigation, but you still have to keep those grapevines watered. The other thing that's going to be really, really key is proper soil pH. If that's out of whack, either they won't grow or they're not going to fruit. If you want to do this yourself, go try to find you a piece of property that's been cleared already and that it's ready to plant. If you've got to do the clearing yourself, a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with cedar trees and things like that, it's going to be a really, really expensive endeavor. So it's always easier if you find a property that's already been cleared. And just like those horse properties, try to find a property that's got ag exemption, because if you've already got ag exemption, you can put it into grape production and you can keep that ag exemption in place. But the great thing about it, even though you're saving taxes, now you're going to be dealing with something that's a completely different lifestyle and legacy play for your family. The third estate may seem a little bit weird that I'm talking about it as a little bit of a secret, because it's waterfront properties, okay? And everybody's like, oh, waterfront's amazing. But the difference with hill country waterfront properties is you actually own the water. It's not like being in a high-rise downtown or on a beach where, you can get to the water, but you don't actually own it. Out here, you find properties that are on the water and you have access to the water and you own the rights to that access to the water. So if you're looking for that waterfront home, I mean, sure, you can get on some of the lakes. The Highland Lakes are amazing. You've got constant level lakes, Lake LBJ, Inks Lake. So that's one possibility, but keep an eye out for riverfront stretches beyond that. There's a lot of rivers that run down through the hill country, and if you can get access to them, and if you can buy a piece of property on some of those riverfront stretches, it's going to be absolutely beautiful. I've seen properties that had natural swimming holes that most of the water was only about a foot deep, but there's an area about the size of a basketball court that's 20 feet deep, and it's crystal clear water. Absolutely beautiful. Now, the one downside to that is you've got to be aware of the flood zones and what side of the property you're on. There's high banks and there's low banks in most of the hill country. You can get a really good idea of what that property looks like if you have an address by looking at the FEMA maps or floodplain maps that are available online, because if you end up with a property that you have to have flood insurance on, you might be looking anywhere from $3,000 to $8,000 a year in addition just to get that insurance on your house. One of the things that can help reduce that is if you can get an elevation certificate showing that the house itself is out of the floodplain. One of the other things that I really like to look for in this case, if we're looking for this type of property, is where is there a house or where can you build a house on a high bank out of the floodplain that's got views of the river, but this is the key, does not have neighbors on the other side that you're kind of backed up backyard to backyard with. You want privacy. That's the whole reason you're moving to the hill country. So you need to be super selective on what you're looking for. The fourth type of estate that I'm seeing more and more people buy now are family compounds. It's becoming a normal conversation point for a lot of people, and the idea of it is really, really nice. The thing is you're usually not going to be able to put multiple houses on a property inside of the city limits. But out in the country where you've got a bigger piece of property and you've got the ability to put in potentially multiple septics and multiple wells, yeah, you can do that. And it's really, really cool seeing these things come to life. Most of the time, if you find a property that's already set up as a family compound, what you're going to find is a main house and a guest house. But the question you should be asking is, whatever you want that to look like, can you put that in place? In other words, can you add 2 or 3 other houses or cabins or whatever your vision looks like to that property? Is it going to take adding additional septic? Do you have enough water availability? But you can ask those questions once you've identified the property. On most of these properties out here, they're going to have gated entries, and there's going to be one drive coming off the road, but then they're going to split off at some point on the land. And another thing to realize is the further you get out of the major metro areas, and well, even the smaller towns, but the further you get outside away from city limits, the looser the land restrictions are going to be. And so, you know, when you're getting out to outlying areas like Burnett County, Blanco County, Llano County, those are the places you're going to be able to have a little bit more freedom with what you're doing on that property. Now, you're still going to have to follow county regulations and state regulations, but again, those are a lot looser than what you're going to find close into cities. And if you find a property that you think is already perfectly set up, make sure you ask a couple of key questions here. First of all, are the utilities that are on site ready right now to add multiple dwellings, or are you going to have to bring in extra electricity and extra septic systems? Another thing is, what are you going to do for water? Is there enough water on site already? Is the well deep enough? Is it large enough? Does it produce enough for 4 or 5 houses if that's what you want? Or are you going to have to dig another well or potentially put in rainwater catchment to make up the difference between the water that you have and what you're going to need to service all of those houses? And another consideration on this, again, the further you get out, the looser those rules and restrictions are going to be. But at a certain point, are you going to get outside of town too far that you're not going to have easy access to things like hospitals, grocery stores, things like, things that you need on a regular basis? And the last of these new luxury estates is aviation properties. Talk about a super niche product, but one that's becoming increasingly sought after by a lot of people. These are usually divided up into 2 different ones. First of all, a property that's large enough to have its own runway there on property, so it's all privately owned. And I've seen a couple of these. They exist in the hill country. And another example of this is going to be more of a private air park for a community. There's examples of this in Spicewood and Bee Cave. But the cool thing about some of these communities is not only are you going to have aircraft hangars, there near the runway, but also there's some that have hangars at the houses. I mean, basically it's another garage for you to park your private plane in. But you're also going to have private car shops. And I've even seen ones with corporate retreat setups so that you can fly people in and have corporate retreats in the neighborhood. And the great thing about these estates is a lot of them, not only is the runway paved, but all of the access to the runway and to the houses are paved also. So you're never actually gonna have to take your plane on an area that's gravel. It's all gonna be blacktop. The other thing these communities have is they're all gonna have fast internet, because right now, thanks to Elon Musk, we've all got internet at our fingertips all the time. A lot of them are gonna have fuel trucks that you can use to fuel your plane. And most of them are gonna be within an hour to an hour and a half access to Austin-Bergstrom International Airport. So think about just grabbing your plane, flying into Austin, and then using that as a jump off point to fly anywhere in the world. It's almost funny to me at this point. I've got buyers that they're looking for a luxury property, and we talk price point and things like that. And, they're in their mind, they're going to be close into Austin, maybe Dripping Springs or Westlake or Lake Travis or something like that. But when we start talking, and one of the things I do with buyers is I ask a lot of questions and find out, what does that end goal look like for them? What are they really looking for. And through that conversation, they realize that if you go another 30 or 45 minutes out, you might be able to find a property that you never knew existed, and that's more in tune with what you actually want out of life. Again, more privacy, not having that neighbor right there staring at you, the ability to walk out in the morning in your, we'll say walk out in your shorts and just kind of enjoy that morning cup of coffee on the back porch without having to worry about who might be looking at you. And at the end of the day, through that conversation, what they find out is that, they think luxury is a certain thing. And I talked about this earlier, that, it's a square footage thing, it's a finishes thing. And they realize that, no, that's not really what they want out of it. What they're looking for is that freedom. What they're looking for is that privacy. They're looking for the ability to kind of build that legacy property that they, then they can pass down to their kids and their grandkids. They're looking for a property that's actually a lifestyle and has a purpose. It's not just something that they stay in during the week. Because what you could do, you could have that town property, you could have that country property, and on weekends when you have time, you could go out and use it and things like that. But what if your day-to-day life was that country property and that gave you everything that you needed, and it was still commutable to all the things that you need on a daily basis, whether that's a job or grocery stores and things like that. But when you then go home at the end of the day, you're living that country lifestyle every day instead of maybe one weekend out of the month.